and welcome. You're tuning in to Unbreakable Hope with me, your host, Jessica Rose. This podcast is all about seeking the light. In each episode, we chat with someone who has either overcome the darkness or who is actively spreading light within their own community. So let's jump into today's episode. Today, we have double special guests. We have the lovely Martin and Kate, who are with the Wounded Warriors Family Support. And this is an amazing organization. You're going to get to hear some of the great work that they are doing. We talk about mobility issues, respite care for caregivers, issues when it comes to transitioning out of the military with a certification, and that certification not transitioning into civilian life. You're going to get to hear some of the amazing work this organization is doing and how maybe you can get involved to support them. Let's jump in. Thank you both so much for being here today. I'm really excited to learn more about you and your wonderful organization. So I'm going to kick it over to Kate and let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate McCauley. I'm the CEO and president for the Wounded Warriors Family Support Organization. I was the first employee hired back in 2007, and I'm 18 years strong.
And Martin.
Thank you, ma'am, for having us on your platform this morning to discuss our legacy programs. My name is Martin Duarte, retired Master Gunner Sergeant, served in the Marine Corps for 30 years, did 4 combat tours, and I have the honor and pleasure to serve as the program's outreach coordinator for Wounded Warriors Family Support.
I love it so much. I always love myself a good Marine, right? I'm so excited to hear so much about your organization. You do a lot of different things as I was looking online, and I'm really excited to be connected because I hadn't heard about you before. And I'm sure that might be the same case with some other service members, veterans, and their families. So, Kate, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the organization itself?
Yeah, so let me talk a little bit about the structure of the organization. We were founded by Colonel John Folsom. It was really kind of a pass the hat type of donation. He was working over in Germany. He was a medevac helicopter pilot, transporting the injured into the hospital in Germany. And there were no comfort items for the soldiers. They basically cut their clothes off and they didn't have any linens, towels, or comfort items. So Colonel Folsom went back to his unit, took up a little pass the hat. Hence, it was very hard to get things donated to the hospital. So they started an organization called Wounded Warriors. And we do have a general on our board of directors that was actually one of the founders of the organization.
That's amazing. That's definitely something that my time in the Marine Corps, I was admin, I worked in deployments. So I remember anytime one of our Marines got transferred to Germany, I always thought about that. I'm like, what happens to their stuff? And then how do they get new stuff? And then how does that work? So I'm glad that somebody said, hey, this is an issue. Let's do something about it. Martin, how did you get tied into this organization?
Well, it's funny you asked that. In 2007, I got slated to deploy to Iraq. And at the time, I was going through a divorce. So my unit knows that during that time, I had to go to court to get my divorce finalized. So I got slated, and they told me I was only going to be there for 6 months. Needless to say, I'm getting ready to pack my gear. I'm looking forward to come back. The second rotation's taking over, and nobody's coming to replace me. So as the Marine Corps goes, hey, guess what? You're it. And I said, well, look, when I came out here, I was told that I was only going to be here for 6 months. Well, at the time we were shutting down Iraq, we were doing the retrograde. And of course, I got extended, and that's where I met Colonel Folsom. Now, during that time, before we deployed, I had one of my major, I was in 01 as well during that time. He retired, so he was supposed to be my adjutant. I had a major that was going to be my adjutant, and I had a master gunny that was going to be the step into IC of the deployment for the C1. Well, both of them decided to drop papers, one because of medical issues, and the other one just didn't want to deploy. So I got triple-headed. So needless to say, I'm running rampant in Iraq, working, anywhere between 12 to 16 hours a day. So I'm exhausted. I'm thinking I'm coming home to relax. Well, that's a negative. The second rotation, that's when I met Colonel Folsom. And one of my job was to brief whenever we had our staff meetings in theater, to brief all our casualties, to brief all our programs that we had out there, all resources that we had throughout theater. And for some reason, Colonel Folsom just took a liking to me, because usually that's done by an 04 or an 05 that does all the briefing. And here you got an E8, E9 select doing all this. And for some reason, you say, when you retire, I'm gonna hire you into the organization. I didn't know much about Colonel Folsom. I knew he was a reservist. So needless to say, we went through the whole deployment. hearing the same thing. Well, after we came back, he demobilized, went back home, didn't hear from him at all. In 2014, I'm in Afghanistan, closing down Camp Leatherneck. We get a request to fly like 200 flags for the organization. You know, my Marines fly them. We come back. I'm getting ready to go on PTAC and start doing house hunting as I'm transitioning out of the Marine Corps. And here comes Colonel Folsom picking up the flags. He says, "Hey, Master Guns, how you been?" I said, "I've been great." He said, "How you doing?" He said, "Well, what are you doing next week?" I said, "I'm just transitioning out, getting ready to punch out of the Marine Corps." And he said, "Well, come up to Omaha so you can see our operation." So I'm thinking I'm just going out there to see, not expecting the job, you know. Uh, Go up there, meet Kate, meet the staff. And I mean, I just felt great, felt like a great place to work. And that's how I got involved working for the organization. And I'm going almost on January will be 10 years working for Wounded Warriors Family Support.
That's amazing. I think one thing that we
Definitely.
forget all the time is a lot of it has to do with the relationships we build at any point in our life. I mean, myself, there's people I've worked with along the way where I'm like, oh, I would love to hire you to do this. And sometimes it's just small contracts here and there, being able to utilize someone's skill set because someone has been able to show that they're trustworthy and that they're hard worker and that they're dedicated or passionate about the topic. So that's really amazing how small the world is too
Oh,
for him to be
definitely.
there.
Most definitely.
What are some of the programs that you all have that you think are the most utilized programs, or maybe the ones that are also needing the most support from our listeners?
So I'll start off by talking about our respite caregiver program. And this program was designed by Colonel Folsom, and it was back in time where the veteran, the male veteran, was getting a lot of the focus and the attention, and a lot of the programs were specifically designed for the male veteran. And as you know, the injuries and war have left their mark. The spouse is basically the caregiver for the veteran. And so what happens to mom? What happens to the spouse when she has a medical emergency? What happens to the family? And at Wounded Warriors Family Support, one thing that's very important to us that all of our programs are designed around keeping the family intact. And the respite caregiver program was designed to do just that. So let's say, here's a scenario. We have mom and dad. Dad is a critically injured veteran. She's his caregiver. They have 3 children under the age of 12. 1 or 2 have special needs. And so you have mom taking care of the household. She might work a little part-time out of the house, just navigating everything with her husband's medical needs, neglecting her own health care. And so now, many years later, 10, 20, 22 years, we're finding that we have a lot of caregivers that are experiencing breast cancers. And so what happens when she has to step away and get care? Who's going to take care of the family? Respite care was designed for immediate, temporary care of a veteran family. It could be an illness, an emergency, or an accident. And 4 things that we do during that time would be home housekeeping, would it be home health care, medical travel grants, because we know it costs money to travel to the VAs. And a lot of our families live in areas that are maybe an hour or 2 away. And then we also would do food. We would do grocery assistance. Right now, the 2 biggest needs in our respite care are the home health care and also the food assistance. So those, again, were designed to let the spouse, the wife, step away. It could be a retreat that she goes to for a weekend, or it could be a stay at a hospital. But again, it's designed for temporary care. What's great about the organization is we've been doing it so long that we have agencies set up nationwide. And so we can get there quicker. You don't have to be approved by the VA in advance. And all you need to do is call and send us your information. And if you're eligible, then we would go ahead and start care very quickly for you. And
That's
Martin, I'll let you talk. I'm serious, excuse me.
fine. Good.
I was going to say, Martin, if you want to pick up the mobility as freedom, that's
Mo-
sort of Martin's sweet spot.
Well, I have 2 legacy programs that I manage, as Kate stated. One is our Mobility is Freedom. So one of the things that Colonel Folsom felt there was a need, and that's something that the VA was doing, but unfortunately, there's a lot of red tape, as you may already know, of the paperwork that you have to submit. So the organization started what is called a Mobility is Freedom Vehicle Grant. And the organization provides a grant up to $30,000 for the purchase of a new or used vehicle. And before we had restrictions just to four vehicles, but during the pandemic, we found out that a lot of dealerships were not holding up their. Once you made a deal with them, they were not holding up that deal due to the fact that there was a shortage of vehicles, uh, and they would sell the vehicle under us after we made a contract with them to buy the vehicle, and the only thing they were waiting was for the check to arrive there. So we opened that up to all dealerships for that. Now, as you know, that our combat veterans, those that lose a limb or are found by the VA, they get a one-time stipend for the purchase of a vehicle. Right now, I think the stipend is almost close to $23,000, and they receive a grant for adapted driving equipment, also a stipend for that. You know, some of our double and triple amputees that we have run into, they're their modifications that came out as much as $35,000. So when you start talking about hand controls, when you start talking about a chair that rotates 180 degrees and drops down to the ground about 11, 12 inches, so the veteran can transition from the wheelchair to the chair, and also a Bruno arm that can pick up that chair, put it on the back of the vehicle with a shell top, so the wheelchair doesn't get wet, and those electronic on the wheelchair, especially if it's an electric wheelchair, does not get damaged. So that's where the cost that you're looking at. Now, over the past 10 years, and of course, this program was started in, I believe, 2014 when Colonel Folsom started it. We have donated close to about almost 300 vehicles during that time frame. And just to give you a little analysis of just the cost, just for an average F-150, you're looking at about $35,000 to $70,000 for your basic model. When you start looking at 35,000, 30 to 35,000, you start looking at 110,000. How is a veteran, double or triple amputee with a family is able to afford that type of vehicle? So that's one of the things that the organization has made a huge impact. I would say about 4 or 5 years ago, we ran into a young captain that was a double amputee, and for 4 or 5 years, he kept applying the same paperwork to get his vehicle approved and his stipend. And he just gave up. He said, "You know what? I'll figure it out." He was driving with a broomstick using the brake and the gas. Our organization found them, and we were able to grant him a vehicle with what met his needs. So that's one of the impacts that the Mobility Freedom does. Now, the other legacy program that we have is in collaboration with the UAW Ford Motor Company. We're able to send 10 veterans to Detroit, Michigan 3 times a year to be trained as welders. You know, you haven't served in the military. You know that when you get out of the military, even though you serve in administration, you don't get out with a certificate or a diploma that says you have the skills to work in that field. Well, guess what? About 90% of the fields that you're in the military do not transfer to a certificate or a degree. So what the Veterans Welding Program does, we're able to send those veterans to be trained by the UAW to become welders. Now, what's so great about this program, the certifications do not come from the UAW or Ford Motor Company, but they come from the American Welding Society, which is the national organization that certifies the specifications for welding for North America. So you start talking about Canada, you start talking about the United States and Mexico. So that certification is good anywhere. Where if a veteran decides to do welding at their local college, their certification is only going to be good for that state. So that provides a bigger range of opportunities for our veterans, and also provides them with the skill set needed to put food on the table. And it provides, we consider these programs as a hand up, not a handout. The other thing that I would like to talk about is a lot of our veterans, when they graduate, some of them have real bad PTSD. They don't like to work with other people, so they wanted to start their own business. Now, I have to give much credit to Kate McCauley and one of our board of directors. They were able to find a company out of Kansas City, Missouri, that did entrepreneurship classes, online classes for our veterans. And over the last 3 years, we have been able to put veterans, and this past year, we were able to include spouses and children that were 17 or older that lived in the household to be able to take those entrepreneurship classes. And they were an online class just for those 8 weeks. You're looking at $500 that WWFS and Pathway Financial were able to provide to our veterans. And during those 8 weeks, they learn how to obtain an LLC, how to do a business plan, how to maneuver through the financial institutions, how to get a loan, how to get a grant, how to do business taxes, how to do HR, and so forth. And the greatest thing about this course is that course is good their entire, as long as that organization is available. So if they have any issues, they will get assigned with a mentor that specifically, his specific knowledge is in that subject, that they're dealing with, whether it's dealing with a bank, whether it's dealing with an LLC or so forth. So they have those resources available to them as long as they need them.
That's amazing. And I have personal experiences with everything that you guys just shared.
You
And I'm
do.
like I'm so excited to be connected with you. And I'm even thinking of other friends that I have that could really benefit from your services. And the personal note, the caregiver respite, it's huge. And like you're saying, that emergent piece. So being able to maintain the day to day, I get some support from the VA for respite, where every week I'm able to have somebody come in and help me take care of my husband, who is a total care patient. But I had an injury recently, and funny story, it stemmed from not getting approved from the vehicle. So like all of it kind of ties in.
Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah, so we've applied multiple times. So just like Martin was saying, all that red tape with the applications is, first of all, when you have a
Mhm.
million things going on, sometimes an application itself is overwhelming to fill out.
Mhm.
But I have filled it out numerous of times. Like I've lost count. I think 8 at this point. And I keep getting rejected because of my signature. They'll say things like, it needs to be a valid power of attorney. Well, I send a copy of my power of attorney every time. Well, also, I sent a copy of their own manual that says, oh, as a spouse, I don't even need power of attorney. And it's just
Right.
been this whole loop that we're stuck in. And even my senator's office reached out to the VA, and the response that they got, they're like, this doesn't make sense. This isn't what we're asking about. I'm like, I know. So because I wasn't getting support on the vehicle front, and like you said, Martin, vehicles are expensive as it is, but
Mhm.
also the equipment.
Mhm.
So I was physically lifting my husband. So for reference, because we've never met in person, I'm
Mhm.
5'2", a whopping 115. My husband
Mhm.
is 5'9", a hefty 185 on a good day.
Mhm.
So I'm picking him up to put him inside my SUV. I had to get an SUV for my own conditions because cars sit too low and I physically
Mhm.
couldn't get in and out of a car. But here I'm lifting my husband onto the seat of an SUV, which ultimately resulted in a couple bulging
Mhm.
discs and a herniated disc. So I had an injury in which my mom had to come stay. It ended up being an ER situation, unfortunately. But my lovely mother, I'm
Mhm.
so blessed to have parents that I can rely on, because not a lot of people have that, right?
I was going to tell you that a lot of them honestly don't, and they do live in remote areas as well. So it's a double complication.
Yes. And that's where we're also fortunate where we live. We live in a small city in Oklahoma, but we're really close to the bigger city, and we're rather close to our VA hospital as well if we need to go there. My husband's specialized care is in a hospital that's like one street away from the VA. So we're really fortunate there being able to get those kind of supports. And it's vital for recovery. So if I didn't have my mom who could come stay with me for 6 days to take care of not only me, but having to take care of my husband, like that's huge, and that's life-changing and
Mhm.
life-saving for both parties involved in the situation. And like you were saying with the mobility, we eventually got approved to get a seat put in. Like Martin was saying, it's really awesome. It comes all the way to the ground. It's the coolest thing ever. Some of my friends' kids like to ride it because they think it's just um,
That's
but the
fun.
seat itself cost almost as much as my actual SUV.
Yeah.
So as we're going to the cancer center, and I'll have all these people coming up to me like, where did you get this seat? How did you get it? And I tell them, we did get VA support for it, but this is the company here locally. These are the things they can offer. But it is a huge expense to invest in
Mhm.
that. And it's also unfortunate because if we didn't get approved for that, and if I didn't have some access to finances through like my business and my
Mhm.
family support to be able to afford to do these things, you have other family members caring for their loved ones doing the same thing, sacrificing
Yeah.
their every being.
Absolutely.
And the other thing that I don't agree with the VA, and maybe, and I know everything deals with funding, but the one-time vehicle grant, I mean, a lot of veterans keep vehicles for 10 years, but after those 10 years, that modification that you put on the vehicles are obsolete. You cannot transfer them to a new vehicle. So when you start talking about a double, triple MPT, that you're going to come out not only for a new vehicle, but also you're going to come out of pocket for the modifications because the VA is not going to provide you 30 grand for modifications. The most I've seen the VA provides has been like 12 grand, and that's top tier. And I've been doing this for almost 10 years and talking to veterans that constantly go through the VA, that's their biggest frustration. It's like, how am I going to be able to have the ability to go and pick up my kids?
Yes. And something to think about too is as technology is constantly changing, right? The seat that we have, we got it in, I want to say October, November of last year.
Oh, yeah.
And about 3 months ago, it broke in the outboard position. Like it was stuck. I'm like,
Right.
how do I get this car on a tow truck if I can't get the seat in it and I can't close the door? So again, my ability to access the place that actually installed it is about 15, 20 minutes from my house. I call them. I'm like, what do I do? They were able to send a technician out to figure out how to get this thing into manual and basically shove it back in the car. And they had to contact the manufacturer. So then I was out of vehicle for about a week while all this was going on and they had to wait for a part. But we're also talking about I'm close to that. People who are not
Yeah.
close don't have that kind of access, then what do? So here we are, you're with a vehicle with these adaptations that have, if they've even lasted the 10 years, because the wear and tear is serious on these things. It is very interesting how the application process works and how the funding works and where we put our money. I think there's a lot of things that we all wish could be changed. And I think even just something as simple as streamlining the system for all the applications. Because there's another VA grant that I got approved. I got a letter in the mail saying, hey, you qualify for this. Did you know? Fill out this like 5 questions. That was it, 5 questions. And I sent it back in and boom, done, easy, got it. Still waiting on a vehicle, but.
The other dilemma that you run into is the transition of VA employees. A lot of the veterans that I speak with, especially dealing with prosthetics, anytime they submit paperwork, either paperwork is misplaced or paperwork they say is not legible. And it's just a constant submission. And not only that, but when you submit your paperwork, guess what? You go back to the end of the list. So if it took you 6, 7 months for them to review your paperwork, well, you just add another 6, 7 months to your paperwork again. So, and I don't know if this is done by design to have the veteran just quit on himself and say, you know what, I'd rather figure out. But you're right. The process needs to be much, dummy proof. I don't understand why we have some of our combat veterans that deserve and need this equipment, have them wait 18 months, 2 years, 3 years to get something approved or something even. And the other issue is the disbursement of money. Even when you get approved, we have had companies that don't want to work with veterans because it takes the VA anywhere between a year. At the quickest claim that I have seen has been 30 days. The longest claim has been 2 years. So a lot of companies that do modifications they tell you, we'll do the work, but you're going to have to pay up front. We're not going to wait for us to get our money. We put in the equipment, we want the money. And I think that's a legitimate answer, but why does it take so long to get that allocation and that money paid? I have not been able to get a response from prosthetics here from anywhere. So maybe you have done better, but I have no clue why is this taking so long.
Our prosthetics is also a huge struggle. And you brought up a good point is about the turnover and the burnout within the VA healthcare system as well. I worked in HR for a short amount of time. I'm woman enough to admit I came home crying on a regular basis. It was not the job that I applied for. I got offered a different job. And then I ended up not even doing the job I was hired to do because somebody else had quit and they had to fill that job. And so you're constantly just filling holes, and the people who are working really good aren't often getting any support. Then it's like, oh, you're the good worker, right? You can get it done. So for speaking kind of on behalf, I guess, of some of my friends who still work there, we have unrealistic expectations, and we want to keep putting more and more and more regulations and more oversight instead of just reviewing the process. I feel like this is with all healthcare systems, though. I do get to experience this, unfortunately, with my husband's care because how specific his care is. The VA can't provide his healthcare, so we're outsourced. But even in those healthcare systems, it's the systems that kill people every day. It's the systems that aren't structured to support their employees. And I personally think if we were to restructure how we view
Mhm.
healthcare systems, and if the clients were actually the employees and you're taking care of the employees, they're naturally going to want to take care of the community that's coming in for services. But again, I feel like we're just constantly, it's messed up. Let's just put more regulation on there. So when my friends call me and say, "You're not going to believe what we have to do now," I'm like, "What?" Like, that's not going to fix the problem. That's just going
Mhm.
to add to the burnout, add
Mhm.
to you're having to do more work over here and not actually do the work for the person who needs the services that you're supposed to be offering.
And the other thing that I think you brought a great point is the staffing. The VA does not have enough personnel to get the stuff they done. I mean, I rarely get seen at the VA. Most of my care is done through specialty care. But even when I do go there, I don't have the same doctor. I don't have the same nurse. That's why I stopped going to mental health. So why do you want me to keep re-talking the same thing that I just talked about the last 30 days? Now you want me to bring it back up because the other physician didn't keep, you know, good notes. So to me, I'm wasting your time, you're wasting my time. So why are we wasting each other's time? And that's how a lot of veterans feel, because the first thing they want to do is give you pills. I have a TBI, so I cannot take any opioids because it will make me psychotic. But when I got here in Texas, that's the first thing they put me on. And luckily, my wife is in the medical field. She said, "Hey, you can't take this." So I had to go back to the VA and let them know, "Hey, look, but this is something that you constantly see veterans, over medicated and just lethargic. And for some reason, they can't function because we rather medicate than provide treatment." I don't know if you have run into that yourself.
I've seen that a lot, both personally and professionally. And I was just talking to a friend of mine while I was at the VA. I'd taken another friend up there for an appointment, and she was talking about some holistic treatments that she had gotten introduced
Mhm.
to and how she really wanted to fight for the VA to have it. And I said, our VA actually used to have this and this and this and that. But every time there's a budget cut, somehow those things are the first to go.
Mhm.
And somehow we constantly have funding for pharmaceuticals. But I definitely experienced that. I had a chiropractor, essentially, I forget what department they ended up having him under, but I had had a surgery go wrong. I actually had my femoral nerve severed for a nerve block that I wasn't even supposed to have. And I was trying all kinds of treatments to get the use of my leg back, to wake my nerve back up. And what this chiropractor was doing, he actually moved to China, learned Chinese to learn in the native tongue. It was really cool, his story. Very, very, very knowledgeable. And I was starting to get success doing all these different treatments. And then the VA came and they said, "Oh, you've been doing this for too long. You got to move on because somebody else needs to be able to come in here and get this treatment." I'm like, but
Right.
it's starting to work. And just like mental health, like you're saying, a lot of VAs, because the funding, oh, we can get students in here, but that's
Mhm.
not really doing a service because you finally build that rapport as you're like telling this stranger basically all of the skeletons in your closet,
Mhm.
and you finally get to that level of trust, and then they rotate out, and you're like, oh, okay.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Or in my case, I timed out. Oh, you've been in a mental health care for too long. I'm like, okay, that's really
Yes.
great. Try
Wow.
having your husband die on you like every other week. That
Yeah.
doesn't just go away, you
Mhm.
know? So that's another part of the funding, like you're saying, the
Yeah.
understaffed, not having enough people in there, they're not having that consistency, but you're also not having consistency with full-time staff if you're not taking care of the staff either.
Right.
Mhm.
So it's this big just like hamster wheel that you just keep tripping over and rolling over time and time again, which causes the need for
Mhm.
organizations like yourselves
Mhm.
really filling in those voids and being able to get around that red tape and helping families more immediately
Yeah.
without the stress and struggle.
Now, what do you think the impact of the cut to the VA is going to take? Is how is that going to affect our veterans? What's your take on that?
I definitely think it's going to affect us. I think, again, like instead of looking at what the real issues are,
Hmm.
they end up focusing on the wrong things. So here we go. We're in a government shutdown. We have people who are already stressed out, worried about paying their bills, coming home.
Hmm.
So as if they don't already have a stressful job. Now they're even more stressed out. And now they're on this like, am I going to have a job? Am I going to get paid? they're not able to effectively care for their clients when their livelihood is at risk because it's their lives, it's their
Mhm.
family's lives,
Mhm.
right? So then we're going to cut money, and then who really suffers in the end? Yes, it's the staff that works there because we're not taking care of them, but then it's the clients that we're saying that we're taking care of by doing all this, and it's just simply not true.
Well, my other concern is how many disgruntled employees are you going to have? Because for essential personnel, you're making them work, but you're not paying them.
Mhm.
So what's my incentive? I mean, eventually I'm going to get paid just like everybody else that got furloughed. But that's my other concern.
Yeah.
My wife watches a lot of drama TV and a lot of stuff about stuff like that that you see like nurses that take it to the extreme because they want to do something, they're mad or something. And I'm like, oh my God, is this is about to happen to our veterans? You know, because I mean, you're already stressed out. You don't have the staff, you don't have the personnel. So what's the outcome? And
Well,
you're forcing me to be here.
yeah, and if we're having people who aren't taken care of and they're stressed out, we're increasing the chance of human error.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And not intentionally, but like you're saying, a lot of these TV shows, I
Mhm.
joke a lot, like I watch The Purge and I think we're not too far from that. Or the Saw movies, like somebody had to come up with that idea, right? Like this could happen, right? Very unfortunate, but I do think that's a huge thing is we're increasing stress, therefore we're increasing the likelihood that there's going to be human error, whether intentional or unintentional, that people are just burnt out and that everyone involved needs to be taken care of better. And it starts with when we're doing these initiatives, are we thinking of the client in our best interest? Are we thinking of our staff as a client and what's in their best interest to keep them going so that they're providing a good source, a good service to the clients? So if the VA employees are stressed out, maxed out, burnt out, they're not going to be able to take care of the veterans. And then the veterans are coming in because we're crazy. We got stuff going on. We're in pain. We're angry. We're not going to be super happy when we come to that front desk, right? And it's not fair for anyone really involved. The poor front desk person, bless them. Honestly, they should be getting paid more than they are because they have to take the beating every day of the veterans like us coming in mad for whatever reason we're there, right? Whatever system glitch happened and canceled my appointment for the fifth time, right? All those things, they have to take all that on and they're not being taken care of. So eventually they're going to leave. Why would they stick around for that kind of treatment from
Oh
both
yeah.
ends, right?
Yeah.
From the leadership from the system, but also from the clientele coming in who naturally go to the doctor's office. You're there for a reason, and normally it's not for a happy reason.
Yeah, most definitely. And I mean, you constantly see that. I mean, there's a lot of times that I do visit the VAs here with the organization um, throughout Texas, and you see a lot of disgruntled service members. As you stated, they go for their appointment, say, "Oh, you don't have an appointment." I say, "Wait a minute, I have confirmation." And they say, "Well, it was canceled. We don't have the staff." And I mean, I just drove an hour to get here, and so
Mhm.
yeah, definitely, I foresee that this is going to get worse before it gets better. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't foresee nothing else.
Yeah, I think that is the unfortunate piece of it is anytime that there's change, things always get worse, but it's the building back up that we need to actually take that step back, take that breath and say, what's something that we could do that is actually going to be positively impactful, right? Because you could do a lot of things that's impactful
Mm.
or there's things that have been done in the past that I've seen, okay, that was effective, but was it positively effective? Right? Is there a way that we can make these things happen that are still keeping everyone in that line in the best interest? And I think we fall short of that. I like to joke when my husband was in the hospital at one point. I'm all about like TMI stories, but they had these, and it wasn't a condom cath. It was like this sticky. It was a sticky. It was called the deflower, and very very sticky adhesive would go on the man to be like a temporary catheter, so wouldn't have to be fully cath. Not comfortable at all. So my joke was either a female came up with the idea and picked that out, or a male who would never have to actually use it because it was horrible for all of us involved. My poor husband in pain having to deal with this thing.
Mhm.
The nurses being like, "We know this thing sucks and it doesn't work, but we don't have any other options." I literally went to the medical supply store and I was like, "What do you have here? What else can we use?" And I was bringing supplies into the hospital because that's how bad it was. Now, luckily, I think enough of us spoke up about it, it changed. So they're using something different now, which is a lot more comfortable for everyone involved. But I use that as an example is that a lot of times people making these decisions are never
Mhm.
actually going to be impacted by the decisions, and they don't take the time to learn from the people who are impacted by
Mhm.
those decisions. And I see that in numerous of things, not just the healthcare space or the veteran space, right? But I think that that's a very common thing that I see
Mhm.
is a room full of people making decisions that aren't impacted or affected by those decisions.
Now, I would like to ask you a question, and this is something that has always been asked, towards me. And for me, it wasn't that difficult. But when you transition out of the Marine Corps, how challenging was it for you to find employment?
Well, my transition was very unique. I was on med hold and I was awaiting for my EAS. And, the good old joke was true. Someone at headquarters Marine Corps didn't do the math right. So when they calculated my leave time and my PTAD, my EAS came back and I was like, oh, I was supposed to leave a week ago. Well, now I still got to do all my out processing and everything. So I ended up having to sell back all my leave. And I had this like plan A, B, C, D situation. And God's plan was to screw all that up. So I kind of went through plan A, B, C, and I was like, oh, D it is. I guess I'm going back home to Oklahoma. So my transition was really rocky.
Mhm.
But when I did come back to Oklahoma, I knew I was going to go to school. I was going to use my GI Bill, whether I stayed in California or I came to Oklahoma. I got enrolled in school again. Thank God for my dad going with me because I almost lost it. My dad literally grabbed my arm and said, I think we've had enough time outside the house today. It's time to go home. Um, so everyone that was involved, you're welcome. My dad had the foresight to say it's time to go.
Mhm.
And then I ended up calling like the director, getting everything fixed the next day.
Mhm.
I was so mad. But while going to school, I had gotten upset by that experience that I had. So I actually went to the VA office where I didn't have a positive experience. And I had made friends with one of the guys there. We were in the same program. And he said, well, we're hiring. I said, okay, I want to work here. So I applied and it was through a work study program. So while you're doing your GI Bill, you can do a work study through the VA at different locations. So I ended up working at my school's VA
Mhm.
office and really changing that from being we can't just come in here and process GI Bills. Veterans need more than that. We need to do more than that. So really changing the dynamics there. And then from there, like you told your story earlier, how you ended up where you're at. I had a guy come out to our veterans rowing program I was a part of and offer me a job to help veterans who are homeless. And I said, okay, turned in my application, did an interview, and started working there. So a lot of it was just who I met along the way and these relationships that I built. And I'm very grateful for that because not everybody has that. Not
Yeah.
everybody has the protection of their support system where
Mhm.
after sleeping in my car for a few days, I'm like, I could just go home to Oklahoma
Mhm.
and sleep in a bed, right? And I was able to come home to my parents who were happy to have me home,
Mhm.
happy to help take care of me and get me back on my feet. And I'm a true believer that there's lots of people who join the military to get away
Mhm.
from the life that they had. I did it out of pure service. Like it's in my blood. I knew I was going to serve. It
Mhm.
was just picking which branch. But I have that family I can go back to. So
Yeah.
that really helped set me up. That is very different than other people, but it was still really rocky because it was an unplanned thing
Mhm.
because of my medical situation.
Yeah, I have run into a lot of veterans, especially in this organization, that have gone the opposite direction. They didn't have that support system. They were married, E5 and below. They didn't really have a plan. They didn't have no savings. So when they got out, they survived off credit cards to the
Mhm.
point where, I mean, they were in debt to their ears. And the only thing they were looking at was bankruptcy. So, and that's something that I would have never known myself, having served 30 years. We all assume that as we have the tools, we have the knowledge that we're going to go out there and do things, but we don't really see the impact that everybody else is going, the different challenges that everybody else is
Mhm.
going through. Because I mean, I tell you, it's heartbreaking to see an E4 married with two kids that have no money, or they're going to the food bank after serving, 4 or 5 years in any service, and they're relying on that. So to me, that's something's got to change. We cannot continue the same path, without making some changes.
Well, and you brought up a great point in a service that your organization provides that can help bridge some of those gaps is the certifications you have in the military don't transition over. So my
Yes.
husband was active duty Navy. He was an aircraft mechanic. Don't ask me what kind because I'll screw it up. But he did that active duty in the Navy. He gets stationed in Oklahoma for sea duty. You heard that right. And in case you're listening, Oklahoma is a landlocked state, but it's the Navy. So he comes in for sea duty service on active duty, and he ends up switching to reserves after some time. Well, he's working at Tinker in the same planes, but he's technically not allowed to do that on the DoD side until he gets all these certifications. So he's got to go get all these certifications for the job that he's already been doing for like 8 years on the same aircraft that he gets to touch on the weekends. He's just not allowed to touch it during the
Yeah.
weekdays under the DoD. So first of all, that's a huge disservice
Mhm.
and barrier
Mhm.
to everyone. I mean, obviously the service member, like my husband, right, put in all that time and work to get this trade to serve his country, and then he gets out and he's not able to use that trade to
Yeah.
still benefit and better our country,
Yeah.
no matter what that looks like and what the trade
Mhm.
is, because we need everybody and their skill sets to make this world go around. So filling that gap, if that could be changed on a national level, think of how many people could transition out of the military with the skill set
Mhm.
and go into the career field. The companies would be thrilled because then they're not having to wait for
Mhm.
certifications or pay for certifications. Like that's a huge gap. And I love that you guys are doing something to help fill that gap, as well as those entrepreneurship. Like you said, some people they're they're better to have a job on their own, create their own business, work for themselves. It works better for them, their schedule, all those kind of things. But then being able to still equip them with those licensing and certifications, that's a huge change that could benefit so many people.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I mean, I wish we had the resources to do other trades, but
Mhm.
unfortunately, I have reached out to other companies, and they're all about the money. Is they want you to fund it 100%.
Mhm.
The great thing with the UAW, they cover half of the costs for us. They cover the everything that they're going to use during the training, of course, the instructors. So, I mean, they drop literally every course, they drop about $94,000 for those 6 weeks. Where Wounded Warriors Family Support drops anywhere between $60,000 to $70,000, depending on the time frame of the year. But, I wish we had more companies that would reach out and support our veteran community. But for some reason, the only time you hear from them is during Veterans Day that they want to do something, give you a free meal or pat you on the back. But yeah, it's something definitely, and I don't know if you recall, but a couple of years back, Congress did take it up that they were going to try to make certifications. But I don't know what happened to that. It just kind of died out and kind of became obsolete up there in the Hill. Have you heard anything like that coming up?
I know that our state was trying to do something. A dear friend of mine was running for labor commissioner, and that was one of her big pushes that she was trying to get approved. So I'm not sure state or federal level. It's something I would love to look into further and see what other organizations can we get behind to back this.
Yeah.
And like you said, yes, you did say welding specifically, and I love that who you're working with is willing to invest
Mhm.
in our country, because that's a true investment, right? And that's a true partnership, is they're saying, hey, we're going to go in with you. Like this person's already been doing this job, or maybe they're new to the welding field, but they want to be able to give back and serve in the welding field. Let's make that happen. And if we're making this accessible and obtainable, then that's going to encourage people to actually get these licensing
Yeah.
certifications and get in the field and be able to grow our country.
Yeah.
And for organizations that are just saying, okay, give me the money, give me the money, give me the money, but they're going to, like you said, want the recognition later. Like we're pro veterans. Okay, what do you do to support that? What do you do to give back and actually
Oh, yeah.
help us make people's lives move forward and
Mhm.
better our communities?
And with that state, I would like to acknowledge two companies that have been working with us with our Mobility is Freedom. We have the Assurance Foundation that for the past 5 years, they have donated a vehicle to Wounded Warriors Family Support. And of course, we'll find the veteran and we modify the vehicle to meet his needs. And they've been doing that for 5 years, so that over the last 5 years, they have contributed. How much would you say, Kate? About four, 300, 400,000?
I would say that's probably a good accurate figure.
And then, yes, ma'am, thank you. And then the other company is Radian company. The last, 3 years, Kate, they've been providing funding for vehicles. And
Yes.
this year, October 14th, we're doing a vehicle presentation to a double amputee couple, John Melby. He lost both of his legs in Afghanistan, and he'll be the recipient of a 2025 F-150 at Village Ford, Pennsylvania. And then November 4th, we're doing the Assurance Foundation. They bought a Suburban 2025 for the veteran. His name is Corporal Joshua Lopez. They're both Marines, and he's a right leg amputee as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge their support to the organization and give them due recognition for everything they have done for the organization and for our combat veterans.
Definitely.
Kate, would you like to add anything? Kate, would you like to add anything to that?
Oh, I think you did a great job, Martin. I don't think I can follow that up, sweetheart.
Well, I love all the work that you're doing, and I know we've been chatting for some time and we've shared some of the initiatives that you're working with. I want to make sure that if there's something we didn't cover, or if either of you have some final thoughts, or
I would like to add one more thing. I always tell folks that, it doesn't matter if you want to donate to our organization, but what I ask for folks to do is go to Charity Navigator. Charity Navigator tracks all nonprofit organizations and displays how your money is dispersed throughout the organization. If you go to Charity Navigator over the last 12, 13 years, our rating has been a 4-star charity, meaning that out of every dollar, a minimum of 80 cents got to go to your programs department to be a 4-star charity. We have averaged anywhere between 83 cents to, I would say, 91, 92 cents, Kate?
I would say 88 would be the top.
Well, see, there you go. See, that's why I got my boss right there.
90's pushing it a little bit.
Yes. So 88, yes. So again, you'll see where the money is being dispersed. Basically, out of every dollar, 88 cents is going into our programs department and 12 cents to keep the lights on and pay the employees. And I'm very proud. Kate she's been our CEO for the past 5 years. She has done a tremendous job, has elevated the organization where it's at right now. So I just want to mention that. I'll pass it over to Kate. She has anything to pass.
Thank you, Martin. And I would just like everyone to know that, this is a mission that is true to our hearts, our souls. And we wouldn't be here without the support of the American people. And that's huge for us. And we hope to continue to grow. And I want to always mention our veterans. That's why we're here. We don't take Veterans Day as a holiday. We're working Veterans Day. We're here standing by to service our veterans, and we hope to be here for another 20 years plus.
I love that so much. I love getting to learn more about your stories, the impact that your organization is doing. And I'm super excited to be able to share this with more people, because I think the work you're doing is so valuable, and all the different things that we've talked about today and beyond. So thank you so much, both of you, for being here today and being able to share this with the world. And I'll make sure to include the links in the description so people can look into if it's a service that they need, or if it's a service that they're able to support, or a simple donation, or just sharing. Sometimes that's a big thing. It's just sharing the mission and sharing the different initiatives out there to reach the people who are able to support, or the people who are in need of these services. So thank you again so much.
And Jessica, just to tell you, you've done a spectacular job, and thank you for caring for your veteran, and thank you for what you're doing to get the word out about what we're doing, what veterans need. We need more people like you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Jessica, not to take anything away from you, but I expected that from a Marine, so nothing personal.
Hurrah, right?
Hurrah.
I love it.
All right. Take care, Jessica. Nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you found this episode inspiring, please share it with someone you never know who needs more light in their life. May this serve as a reminder that there's always darkness in the world. Do not let it consume you. Always seek the light. Please take a moment to do the good old subscribe, rate, and review. Your support means so much to me, and it helps me spread more light and love. Until next time, be kind, be loving, be human, and don't ever let anyone steal your hope.